Again, we apologize for the late start. The Prime Minister was chairing a meeting with all of the key government agencies responsible for the response, and they had to report to the Prime Minister and answer all of his questions, and so that meeting went a little bit over time, and so we are here now, and the Prime Minister will tell you more about that. And so first up, we will have the Met Service come first to tell you about the storm. Earlier this morning, I said to my children, I cannot anymore with this storm. It won't tell me what it is doing. And so we have Evan Thompson, and Minister Samuda will also follow him in relation to the forecast. Evan Thompson, Jamaica wants to know.
Thank you very much, Minister Morris Dixon, and a very good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Good afternoon, Prime Minister, all our ministers of government, Cabinet Secretary and members of the board of PSs, all our heads of agencies and departments, and of course the representatives and the media and the people of Jamaica who are listening. A very good afternoon to you at this time. I just want to give you a quick update on what is happening out there. We've been talking a lot about Tropical Storm Melissa. A very beautiful name, but I'm not too sure if it's a beautiful storm. We're hoping that this will not actually visit the island, but it still is in a position that it has been in for the past 12 or so hours, or maybe longer than that, because the system has not moved very much, neither has it developed significantly. There has been no change in the development of this system thus far over the past few hours. This is what the satellite imagery looks like. So it's rather ominous, what we can see on the picture here, but the center of the system is somewhere south of that smallest red area that is close to Jamaica, a little bit south or lower than that smaller red area. So it does have bands around it, a lot of rainfall associated with the system, and that's why we've been putting so much attention on this system, because if it does move in the direction of Jamaica, which is what is projected, it's likely to create quite a disturbance across the island. So just to tell you what the position, the latest forecast track is, they point to the bottom right hand of that picture where you'll see that round orange looking circle, or is it pink? I'm not too sure, I'm not seeing very clearly from here. But that is where the system is located at this time. And the projected movement will take it first to the northwest and then to make a change to move directly west, practically west. Now at that point, that's when we are expecting that the system will become a hurricane. It is currently a tropical storm. It will continue, or is expected to continue moving westward, and the point that is just south of Clarendon, the center of the island, is where we expect it to become a major hurricane. That means it would become a Category 3 or more hurricane, continuing to move westward, and then it will take a move toward the northwest and then toward the northeast, passing the west coast of Jamaica. So it seems that Jamaica is highly protected at this time by the Almighty, because as the system will move toward us, then we expect that it will move around us rather than moving directly over the island. That is what the forecast is. Of course, it is moving very, very slowly. And so there could be changes in how the other climate features orient themselves, and that will make a big difference as to how that track progresses. If high pressures move out of certain areas and low pressures move in or out, then we could have a complete change in the track that is projected of this system. Over the past few hours, about 6 hours, the system has actually shown a slight drift toward the southeast, which is in a direction away from Jamaica, which is a little bit interesting at this time, but it is not to be, yes, we can have some hope, and that's why I wore yellow today, because there's a bright hope that we have where the system is concerned, but it does not mean that the system is now moving away, because that could be very short-lived. The center has been relocated a couple of times, and so that's why it seems that it is actually drifting in that general direction away from us. But it is so slow, it's actually moving at just about 2 kilometers per hour, which tells us we could walk faster than that. So it's not impressive in terms of its movement toward or away from Jamaica. The track remains the same, the projected track that you see on your chart. Let me just move a little bit more just to show you another image of that chart. This doesn't seem to be moving. Okay. All right, so here we see it. You see the H meaning hurricane, the M meaning major hurricane, and as a major hurricane moving around us. You would recall Hurricane Beryl last year. It was a category 4 to the south of the island, which means it was a major hurricane. So this is similar to also Hurricane Ivan, Hurricane Dean in past years, and moving around us. And then continuing, I'm moving in the wrong direction now, like Melissa. Here we see another image and just showing the timelines, because it is on Saturday that we expect it to become a hurricane moving west. It is on Sunday that we had expected for it to become a major hurricane, and then continuing around us, and you can see that this goes all the way to Wednesday. So this is a slow-moving system that is expected to remain in our territorial waters for a long time. It has already been here for almost a week, and this is likely to continue for almost another week. We are continuing to watch the movements. Here we see those lines are representative of where we expect, or when we expect, tropical storm force winds to impact on the island. So you can see that Saturday is when we had expected. It said Saturday at 8 a.m. That system to be just about touching on the eastern coastline of Jamaica, and then moving Saturday, going through the day, Sunday morning, being west of the island. So that is it is expected to pick up speed in terms of movement as well as intensity, and then it is expected to move around the island. So we see the timelines that were projected, but this was some time ago before the system stood still. So that timeline will have to be shifted for later activity than what we are seeing here in this chart. This just gives an idea of where hurricane activity could take place, and the center of that, what you see as a kind of circle, a contracted circle or a broken circle, you will see that the center of that is where the system is expected to become a hurricane, and therefore the extent of the winds that would imply hurricane activity would be just touching the eastern end, of Jamaica, and that's when, of course, we would know that we would have to be under a hurricane warning. We have not gone to a hurricane warning yet. The country is under a tropical storm warning, which means that tropical storm conditions are expected across sections of the island. And we also have a hurricane watch, which means that hurricane conditions are a possibility for the island, and that is within 48 hours. So I believe that takes me to the end of this presentation, and I'm sure the opportunity will be there for you to ask questions afterwards. Thank you.
Thank you, Evan. Most Honorable Prime Minister Andrew Holnes, colleague members of Cabinet, other members of the Executive, Cabinet Secretary, PSs, heads of agencies, members of the after a storm. After a storm, it is recommended that you boil water. Those notices will come from the Ministry of Health or the National Water Commission and will be amplified through JIS and its varying channels. But we ask that you listen very carefully to those notifications so that you know when it is safe to cease boiling that water. And final comment, Prime Minister, we have continued disconnections during this period to ensure that everyone is able to backfill their storage and is properly prepared with their household and certainly community storage during this difficult time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Morris Dixon, and thanks to those who are listening live as well as those who are listening online. The National Works Agency has been fully activated to assist with the National Disaster Preparedness effort. We have activated all our parish managers as well as our engineers to assist in determining the most vulnerable areas within the country that requires urgent intervention. Initially, the National Works Agency, at the instructions of the Prime Minister, would have allocated 200 local contractors in preparation if there is need for the removal of debris and the clearing of roads. During the storm, if it does come, we will maintain a posture of observation as well as collaborating with the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management in case there is need for emergency activity to provide access to vulnerable persons who may have challenges. Post the disaster, if it does occur, the National Works Agency will lead in creating single-lane access to whatever roads and thoroughfares may be closed, which primarily focused on providing access to the emergency services, assessment of critical national infrastructure.
Thank you very much, Chair. Most Honorable Prime Minister, Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, heads of agencies, members of the media, persons joining online, good afternoon. In terms of our general state of readiness, the JCF Hurricane Preparedness Plan, has been activated in anticipation of the possible impact, and the following measures are in effect. So we have convened our meeting with all area and commanders to review our readiness protocols. Our incident command centers have been stood up for activation at the divisional level. Liaison officers have been assigned to coordinate with parish disaster committees and the ODPEM. Our operational response, which includes our quick response, our highway patrol, and mobile units, are briefed and ready for deployment. We have reviewed and updated our shelter security plans. In terms of our management structure for the hurricane operation, our headquarters management team that has responsibility for operations across the island has been stood up. In addition to that, we also have an operation management team specifically looking at the corporate area, given the number of vital infrastructure that exists there. Our area and geographic divisional management teams have already been stood up as well. Our highway patrols will be deployed to monitor key arterial routes and flood-prone corridors. Our mobile patrols will maintain security in our business and residential districts, and the quick response units stand ready to support evacuation, rescue, and post-security. Coordination with the JDF for joint monitoring of critical infrastructure is underway, and some of these critical infrastructure that have been identified that we are paying key attention to are Petrodrum and the fuel depot, airports and seaports, or hospitals and major medical facilities, our business district and financial hubs, our ports, correctional facilities, and all government offices, and our major road networks and bridges. In terms of equipment and resources, we have conducted a check on our inventory of emergency supplies and protective gears, and we are satisfied that we have adequate numbers to carry us through. We have checked and fueled our generators, our communication assets, including our police emergency command center that has always withstood these challenges in a very good state, and we expect it.
If required. We can also bring to bear our drone assets for damage assessment. Where concerns internal security operations, the Jamaica Regiment, of course, country, and they will support the police in terms of maintaining law and order. All of our personnel who are now deployed in Haiti, sir, are accounted for, and the JDF will, of course, be ready to provide the assistance if required. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The last two presentations, will be Minister Tufton, and then we will hear from ODPEM in place of Minister Mackenzie, who we're having a little bit of a difficulty because he's on the road connecting to him. So, Minister Tufton.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister, colleagues. So yesterday we gave some of the details on the preparedness of the Ministry of Health to address during the storm or after the storm. I'd just like to spend 2 minutes to indicate what tends to be the biggest challenge as it relates to health security after a storm. It's normally waterborne and food-related infections. And that's because food spoil, because normally there's no electricity, or it gets contaminated in one way, shape, or form. So persons tend to have stomach issues, diarrhea, dehydration, and that is a real challenge. And normally they require rehydration, which in the context of a storm can be challenging, so they end up in the accident and emergency ward. So whether it's water or food, the advice to minimize this challenge would be store your non-perishables. I'm a big fan of sardines. You don't need anything to open it up. Put it in a plate, add a little salt and pepper, and you're good to go. And water crackers, very, very healthy. So I would stock up on a lot of that, and this is not an ad for any particular manufacturer. There are different brands out there. But the easier you can access those non-perishables, the better it is. And if you have to live on that for a few days, you know, you probably will shed a few pounds, which may actually be good for you, right? The other, of course, is drinking water and storing drinking water. You know, you can now access the regular NWC supplies or buy your bottled water, but you should try and have a few days of water stored up because it's not always guaranteed that you're going to have piped water because it's linked to the electricity generation. And even so, normally the water is not as safe. In the immediate aftermath, there's a risk of contamination. The other, of course, is accidents from falling debris or us taking chances by going out in the water, especially the children. You know, it's a pool that has gathered in the front of the yard, or during the rain itself, persons taking risks to go and nail back down the zinc on the roof, that kind of thing. You really are best advised to avoid those risky endeavors, and adults providing guidance to their children, keeping them indoors, because water tends to be contaminated in the immediate aftermath. And of course, during the rains, going out, going on elevation, trying to repair or to replace, lightning, falls, all of that puts you into a difficult position. So we certainly would advise against that, because that is another source of A&E type of work. And then the final one I raise is for our senior citizens who are chronically ill. Most of us have 1 or 2 NCDs, non-communicable diseases, diabetes, arthritis, cardiovascular disease. We depend on medication to stabilize those circumstances. If you run out, don't have, sometimes it puts you into a panic mode, which amplifies the problem. So we do urge persons to check their supplies, and where they can restock today, then they should try to do so. Visit your pharmacy, call your doctor. They can order it at the pharmacy, pick them up, but make sure you have at least a week's supply. And then the final point is, if you need additional information, please remember 8881-LOVE, right? 1-LOVE, easy to remember. That's the number to our switchboard that we will respond to and provide whatever guidance that is necessary. So keep safe, and we pray for an easy passage.
Thank you, Minister. And the last person before our Prime Minister will be Mr. Richard Thompson, our acting head of ODPEM. And ODPEM is really that important coordinating body in this country, and so you'll get an update from them. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Morris Dixon. Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holnes, Prime Minister of Jamaica, Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, heads of entities, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. The Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, with high-level technical support from the Met Office, we have been monitoring the system from Thursday of last week. In relation to us monitoring the development of the system, we have carried out a number of preparedness activities throughout the process. One of that main preparedness activity is to ensure that the adequate committees of council are meeting, and also the parish disaster committee as well. So we had a very extensive meeting, or we have been having extensive meetings of the operational arm of the National Emergency Operations Center, the National Response Team, and the parish disaster coordinators have been meeting extensively to ensure that we are putting in place adequate planning procedures for the event that will take place going into the weekend, that being Tropical Storm Melissa. In terms of the operational overview that we are looking at, current operational overview is focused primarily on our critical preparedness actions, such as shelter management. Shelter management is critical. We have in excess of 881 shelters currently in country. To date, all shelter mechanism has been placed on standby, and we have out in St. Thomas one shelter that has been activated, where there is one elderly gentleman so far is in that shelter. So we continue to ensure that for those critical communities, as you can see, that projection which is there, we have mapped in terms of the passage of the storm what we consider to be some critical parishes. Not that the entire island is not critical. We are planning for the coordinator and the Secretariat of Council. Food for the Poor, Red Cross, ADRA, World Food Program has played a critical part in that as well, to ensure that we are pulling everything together. Major concern for that committee, pre-positioning, looking at our humanitarian coordination. The humanitarian coordination point, based on the discussion from the committee and based on what has been said already by Minister Charles, will be coordinated through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, and that will be fed into the overall coordinating umbrella of the NEOC, ensuring that all our players understand critically what needs to happen, just to ensure that we are not having duplication of effort, which we don't want to have happening at this time, and also to ensure accountability. Accountability is essential in any operation that we're doing. Prime Minister spoke to that earlier in terms of that we have to be accountable for everything that we're doing, and the aspect of procurement is critical to that as well. And also to ensure that we're strengthening the overall national coordination around humanitarian action. The Public Information Committee as well, which is critical. Information is critical in times of disasters. They have been having their meeting. That committee is chaired by the Jamaica Information Service. And they're ensuring that within that operation that the communication protocols are embedded as well through the NEOC. So that is to ensure that we are speaking in one voice, and that we are managing aspect of misinformation and ensuring that persons understand critically within the sphere of our operation that it is essential that they are taking information from the correct source. So with that, I will stop here, Prime Minister. There are a lot of other things that we will continue to push out to the general public in terms of what they need to be doing now, in terms of their own preparation. We have been pushing that in terms of our communication on our websites, press releases, and that is supported by the Information Committee of Council, and which is chaired by the Jamaica Information Service. So we continue to provide the public with information, and we continue to do our preparedness as we go into the weekend. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. And now we hear from our Prime Minister, Dr. the Most Honorable Andrew Holnes.
Someone sent me a message, which I thought was thank you, Minister. Interesting enough to share. Thank you. And the message read, Prime Minister, we haven't seen you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Someone sent me a message, which I thought was interesting enough to share. And the message read, Prime Minister, we haven't seen you in all that have been said. A government that is made up of ministers, heads of entities, permanent secretaries. Well, let me say it in this way. There is a government that is made up of ministers, heads of entities, permanent secretaries, various public officers and administrators, and they all must do their jobs. And my job at times is to ensure that they are all well coordinated and that they're all doing what they're supposed to be doing. Yes, so sometimes you are leading from the front, and sometimes you are quarterbacking, as the Americans would say. But there is never an absence of leadership. And I'm certain that you would have seen on display the ministers taking responsibility for their various portfolios as it relates to preparedness for the approaching weather event. This is a good segue, because during this administration you would have seen the country at risk at several weather events and other kinds of threats, including a pandemic. And we have generally handled them all very well. I believe our administration has managed crises very well and has ensured that we not only withstand the threats and the crises, but we recover and recover quickly and stronger than before. Parallel with greater intensity. The weather events are becoming more frequent in nature, but the frequency is also parallel with greater intensity. So we're seeing more weather events which are more intense in nature. But we're also seeing these kinds of events overlapping. So you're seeing more weather events that are of increasing intensity, but before one is finished, another one is coming. So they are overlapping. So the administration has to have a standing policy and strategy to deal with crises that are more frequent, more intense, and overlapping. And that is why we have taken a very systematic approach to dealing with these issues. There is existing a legislative framework which guides how we respond to crises that we term disasters, and that is the Disaster Risk Management Act, and that is the framework within which we will operate. Certainly, there are constitutional provisions under emergency powers, but it is at this time not our intention to utilize those powers. We would have heard from ODPEM in our briefing session before this, and ODPEM will give us an assessment shortly as to whether or not the government should declare a disaster or a threat of a disaster. I think you know what will happen, that given the update from the Met Office that Jamaica is at risk, there is a threat of the weather event affecting us in a significant way. The latest report suggests that the eye of the hurricane would be the weather system. Still, it's not yet a hurricane. The system is about 220 miles southeast of Kingston, Jamaica. It is still moving very slowly, and that has posed a difficulty for us in planning, because you don't want to put your preemptive measures too early. People get frustrated and say it's not going to come, and then they go back to normal activity, and then it comes. So we have been trying to calculate when to put in the preemptive measures. You would have seen that we gave an early preemptive measure yesterday by suspending schools. And today, I believe it is at 2 p.m. that the public service, the public sector will be asked to go home. I suspect the private sector will follow suit. So we're really trying to gauge, and there is a reason why we have to be very careful in engaging. Beryl, when it hit Jamaica, cost us about $57 billion of our 2023 GDP. Will have an impact. And it probably cost us about 0.5% in terms of a reduction in our GDP growth. So it will have an impact. We don't want to exacerbate the impact by taking actions that will reduce commerce, reduce business too early. So it's a real guessing game, and it requires us meeting, analyzing, getting all the data so that we make the right decisions. So I know that there might be some frustration in the public, but bear with us because we can't make any mistakes with the measures that we put in place. Under the Disaster Risk Management Act, when the orders are proclaimed, which we expect that we will do a declaration possibly the end of today or sometime early tomorrow, the Act will give certain powers that the administration and the various entities that are vested with these powers will use for the protection of life and property. And we ask the public to cooperate. And you can be assured that before any of these measures are taken, there will be consultation with the stakeholders, and there will be adequate public notice so that everyone will know. We do ask for your cooperation. We will take one other measure, which is under the Trade Act, to prevent any price gouging that might take place. The Minister of Health guided you properly to say stick with, healthy foods that won't perish as a result of lack of refrigeration. And he did mention sardines and water crackers. But I saw a picture recently of shelves in our supermarket, and all the bread is gone. So people are taking precautions, stocking up on food. But it leads to a very important point, that as these products become scarce, there may be persons tempted to raise their prices. And we will not have that during a disaster. And therefore, the Minister of Industry, Investment and Commerce will shortly sign an order to this effect to prevent price gouging. Now, you would have heard extensive reports from Minister Vaz, the JPS, and from Minister Samuda and the NWC, and from the utility companies, that they are projecting that as a result of the experience of Beryl, they will be in a better position. Evidence of that is that I am told that 31 linemen are already in Jamaica, and others are being flown in as we speak. So the intention is to be ahead of the recovery effort should we be impacted in any significant way from this. I am told as well that the necessary precautions have been taken to ensure that telecommunications remain functional. Minister Samuda has advised that we will be able to have an uptime of about 80% within 72 hours of the hurricane for most customers, and that they have taken measures to control turbidity by closing off some of the intakes into their major water storage. This they are able to do because already those storage areas are full, so they can control and manage that. So we are expecting that if the event is a burial, then we should be able to keep these services throughout as long as possible throughout the weather event if it does impact Jamaica. I'll make here another statement which is of import. During Hurricane Beryl, the loss of telecommunications was not so much because of the impact of the hurricane itself, but there was significant theft of fuel and equipment relating to telecommunications. We have indicated that we intend to amend the law to have stiffer penalties and to criminalize some of these acts because they do impact the entire economy and should be treated with more severely. In lieu of the amendments to the law, the security forces have been alerted that special attention ought to be paid to these critical infrastructure, which are necessary for the continuity of government and for the continuity of business, and indeed for public safety. So, Commissioner of Police, you have been tasked specifically to ensure that there is no break in our telecommunications and to ensure that these criminals who would want to take advantage of the disaster to exploit our telecommunications infrastructure, that they are dealt with in the harshest way. The JPS has informed that they have already taken steps to clear vegetation from their lines, and that is indeed good news. They had already started work in restoring their lines and strengthening the infrastructure, so I'm expecting that we would not have a fallout as we did during Hurricane Beryl. I'm told that Petrojam has made the necessary provisions and has taken the necessary steps to ensure that we would have over 2 weeks of refined products, fuels and other products that we would need, and LPG as well. So during and after the disaster, even if no ships were to come in, we would have at least 2 weeks of supplies. Now, during Hurricane Beryl, the greatest impact would have been on residential roofs. And in flooding in areas that are flood prone, houses would have been destroyed by flooding. It's very difficult to gauge whether or not this weather event will parallel Beryl in terms of its impact. This weather system seems to be very unusual in that it is essentially sitting there southeast of Jamaica, creeping at 2 miles per hour, and its eye would have been doing some strange things, but it is, what we have heard is that the wind force has increased from, I believe, 45 miles per hour to now 60 miles per hour, so it is strengthening. Whatever happens, the projection is that it will come closer to Jamaica, and we would be affected one way or the other by either rain and wind, or just rain. So whatever happens, there will be, we can safely say, there will be an impact. Something will happen. The likely impact would be the rain event. And that would mean flooding, landslides. It would also mean that there could be some marooning of communities. Some communities could be cut off. And it would definitely mean a scoring of our already aged and struggling road infrastructure and possibly some impact on our bridges. It means, therefore, that households should take precautions in ensuring that whatever work they can do to their roofing to prevent leaks, they should do so. When we flew over the affected areas for Hurricane Beryl and we saw the roof damage, and then when we landed and saw the damage up front, what was clear is that the roofs that were damaged did not use the building code requirements in their construction. It is not too late to make adjustments and modifications to ensure that your roof is protected. The government will launch a very comprehensive humanitarian and recovery strategy after the event. But for that to work effectively, the beneficiaries, the people who would require support and assistance, must have identification. There is a view that because it is a disaster, all the rules are suspended. I hasten to advise everyone, in particular the permanent secretaries, the heads of departments and the accounting officers and the ministers, there is no suspension of accountability rules, even in a disaster. And every dollar that is spent has to be. The same people who are screaming that we need it now, are the same people who will turn around and say, where did you spend that money? So there is no break in accountability. And we ask the cooperation of our citizens in providing proper identification so we can track where the benefits go, who received the benefits, and for what reason. This is also important when it comes to not just accounting to ourselves, which we must, but it is highly likely that we will get international donor funding and philanthropic support. And they too require that the resources that are given philanthropically is accounted for. So there would be an accounting process. So in practical terms, because this is going to be a weather event that is likely to be a heavy rain event, you should protect your important documents. Put them in a Ziploc bag, tie them up in a plastic bag, keep them somewhere safe, because we're going to need to be able to identify you in order to facilitate a very quick recovery process. If you live on gully banks, if you live in river courses, if you live in areas that were flooded during burial, expect that this will happen again, that there will be flooding. Take the necessary measures. I have not yet said evacuate, but if we declare a disaster, evacuation orders will be in effect, and that will be, as I said, within another few hours we should be able to declare that. But I'm putting everyone on notice. If you look on the map there, you will see that we have already scoped out the areas that are at risk. We will publish those, and we will call up the names of the communities to say, be prepared, be alert. In terms of transportation for evacuation, the Ministry of Transport is already prepared. The JUTC buses are already alerted to the need for evacuation, so we will provide some amount of public transportation. If it becomes necessary, the toll roads will be open to allow persons to move more quickly and safely. So we are prepared in that regard as well, and we encourage persons, if you're called upon to be evacuated, take the opportunity and leave the area. I want to say a bit about information. You can't give too much information during a disaster. And this would be now our third press conference on the matter, third or fourth? Third press conference, and we keep informationalizing the public, and that is for a reason, because there could be persons with nefarious intent, or just mischievous intent, or just for fun, could provide information that is misleading, which could lead to disastrous consequences. So we have to be out there putting information in front of you all the time. And I would encourage all Jamaicans to pay attention to the official information sources, the Met Office, the Office of the Prime Minister, ODPEM, my pages. JIS, and of course the Ministry of Education and Information. So all our official pages, you can rest assured that all the pages are centrally coordinated. And just to say a word on the central coordination, ODPEM is the entity that is charged with the central coordination of Jamaica's disaster preparation and response. And they play some role in, a significant role actually, in recovery. But certainly at this phase of the disaster and during the humanitarian and relief effort and in the recovery effort. In terms of roadways and other infrastructure, Minister Morgan would have said that we have already allocated $400 million. Again, we have to be cautious. When do we make the allocation? And when do we commit the public expenditure? I think we have a good measure right now. We have done a good balance in giving all constituencies a minimum threshold of about $3 million, and that is to be used for drain cleaning or other civil works that is necessary to prevent flooding and landslides if possible. As the storm comes closer and we are able to project the areas that are going to be specifically impacted, then we will consider making other allocations. Now, I want here to say that the government does not have an unlimited source of revenues to respond to this event. But in the last 10 years, Jamaica can say that it has achieved a certain level of fiscal resilience, meaning we are able to respond to disasters, particularly without necessarily borrowing. And that is because we have, one, put contingencies in the budget. Two, we have a disaster fund that is funded, and we have parametric insurance that is in effect, and we have catastrophe bonds that are in effect, and we have certain borrowing arrangements conditional on a disaster. And so we have lined up quite systematically the financing for dealing with and responding effectively to a natural disaster. And that is a feature of this administration. It didn't really exist in this significant way before now. And we intend that this will continue, which is why I started at the point that it is important that we manage the disaster such that it is not of a greater impact on our economy because of any lack of management of the disaster. And that is what your administration is doing. Yes, it will have an impact, but we're going to use management to minimize the impact so that we can continue to grow. It will have an impact on our growth, but if it's not managed well, the impact will be even greater. And so the response the citizens of the country should know, it's not just about how we get food to people who don't have it during the disaster, and how do we get water to people who don't have it right after the disaster, and how do we make sure that the various shelters are properly stood up and people are taken care of. A large part of the disaster response is to how do we ensure that the farmers get back into the field quickly? How do we ensure that the hotels are back up and running quickly? How do we ensure that the electricity grid stands up so that production comes back quickly? And that's where we are, and that's what I've been working on, coordinating everything, making sure that after the disaster we're back up and running very quickly. That is resilience. So, in closing, I want to, one last thing. The JDF and the JCF are critical to maintaining security during the disaster. But they will also play an important role in the humanitarian and recovery efforts of the government. The Ministry of Labour and Social Security is in charge of the humanitarian and relief response, but they will always have a human resource constraint in terms of the number of social workers that they would need. I take this opportunity to ask persons who would be willing to volunteer. They have that social services skill, particularly our churches and other groups, to coordinate with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security. We welcome your support if you are able to do so. But the JDF and the JCF, I have asked them to partner with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security to enhance and augment the human resources that we have to ensure that the relief effort and the humanitarian effort works very well. But importantly, as we learned from Beryl, we need to have the capabilities to do rapid damage assessment. And I've asked the JDF to work closely with ODPEM to develop this capability, particularly using drone technology to help with the assessment of damage so that we can have a better base on which to make the financial projections so we can better allocate resources for recovery. So, my fellow Jamaicans, you can see from all that we have presented that, first of all, your government has acknowledged where it has weaknesses. We have evaluated our programs, and we are trying as best as we can to have those gaps closed. I believe from the preparation phase, we are ready. So I think all the preparations are in place. I know that there may be some members of Parliament saying, we need more, we need more. I can hear it. And I can also hear the councillors saying, we need more, we need more. Yes, we will be looking at what more can be done, but as I said, we have to gauge where the storm is, what the impact will be, so that the allocations can be more targeted to the areas of need and not generally spent. So as soon as we have a better grip on where the allocations need to be focused, then we will make more announcements, and we will inform the members of Parliament and the councillors about what else can be done. So I urge Jamaicans to take this weather threat seriously. You have nothing to lose, even if it doesn't come. Right? So if it doesn't come and you're prepared, fine, you have lost nothing. The greater loss is that if you didn't prepare and it came. Right? And by now, we should have internalized and made it a culture that once it is declared that there is a weather threat, take precautions. Never take it lightly. I encourage all Jamaicans of faith to pray. To pray. We saw Hurricane Matthew, which was almost on a similar trajectory, and that just made a U-turn between Jamaica and Haiti. Who knows? Even though this is now southeast of Jamaica, it may very well pass Jamaica and go elsewhere. So still have faith and keep praying. And secondly, be smart. During Beryl, I received the terrible news of a youngster, I believe, playing football and running after a ball, fell into a gully and was washed away. I urge all Jamaicans to protect yourself. There's no need to be playing football, no need to be climbing any trees. You have been given enough notice that this weather event is coming and that it could be disastrous. So take all measures to protect yourself. Thirdly, pay attention to the bulletins and the updates. We have given enough information. We have enough platforms. Pay attention to those. Do not take information from sources that are not authoritative or official during this time. And finally, every citizen has a duty to protect your life, obviously, but your property. You can't just wait on the government to come and do it. Every citizen has that duty. So as far as you can, you should protect your property. I have been seeing many messages coming to me regarding persons living on persons on river courses, pointing out a wall that is deteriorating or some other civil works that is at risk. At this time, even if we were able to find equipment to do it, it's just not going to be possible to address all the infrastructure weaknesses that could potentially pose a challenge during a hurricane. So you need to take the precaution to protect your property and yourself. That precaution may mean you have to move. It may mean taking a sandbag, or it might be just taking a push broom and clean the drain that runs across your yard so that it's not flooded. I know it's a difficult thing to say, particularly with the context of this historical lack of maintenance of the infrastructure. But I'm being very practical and being to you as my family that this is what we need to do to survive. Yes, we're not satisfied with the quality of drainage. We're not satisfied with the quality of roads. But these are national crises, essentially. And we're not going to be able to repair all the drains, in the next 4 or 5 years. And even so, it takes time to do it. So rest assured, we do plan, and we are in the process of improving the infrastructure. But while that is going on, these disaster events are occurring, and therefore we need to be smart and responsible about how we respond to them. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the update. Keep safe and keep praying.
Thank you very much, PM, for all of your words. And as we close this press conference, we're going to ask for more prayers. PM, we have online Dr. Elaine McCarthy Nunez, the former chair of the Jamaica Umbrella Group of Churches. She is in Manchester right now, and so she will come on and do a closing prayer for us.
Thank you so much, Minister. And may I acknowledge our Prime Minister, the other Ministers of Government present, various heads of entities, and all those who are joining in at this important press conference. I'm going to ask if you